Eventually, we'll find the right combination of dropping and reconnecting that'll make this work.
We'll put the right, say the right rituals and anoint the right oils and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Appease the machine spirits.
Okay, all the settings are normal. Can everybody hear?
I can
hear Dennis.
Yay. I can hear Dennis.
Yay, now we can continue.
Now I can't hear Rob. No, I'm just kidding.
Don't do that. Don't do that. Welcome to Preferred Enemies, the Warhammer 40k podcast that's looking in our crystal ball. I'm your host, Rob.
Kevin.
Dennis.
And Richard.
And yeah, we are going to be looking in this episode into the future. We are going to be prognosticating what might happen in 11th edition. We know there's an edition change coming, although it's one of those things. It's the worst kept secret.
You said the future. I thought we were going to Warhammer 50k.
No, not that far future. Not that far future. Also, everyone's dead then. Someone has won and it wasn't humanity. I'm just guessing.
I mean, at this point, 40k feels optimistic. But anyways.
Yes. So we will be guessing at some things that could or might not happen during 11th edition. But before we do that, there's actually a fair amount of news to talk about. First off, I think one of the bigger announcements is that the World Championship is not going to be held in the United States. It's not going to be held in Atlanta. It is going to be held in Barcelona, Spain.
The World Championships goes to other places? That doesn't seem right. Who knew? The world is not just the continental United States? I don't buy it.
They don't want you to know that, but yes. They're holding it in Barcelona this year. I do not know if that is in response to the discussions that some people did not come to the World Championships because of reasons here in the U.S. I'll leave that up to your imagination to fill in, but
I'm sure that's part of it. But I'm also, Barcelona is a lot closer to where GW is based in the UK. There's a huge European population, and honestly, like rotating it around and going between the United States and Europe, makes it more fair for travel and stuff like that. So honestly, it's fine.
Oh yeah, I think
it looks like a great
fine.
venue that they've got for it. So yeah, and it's a little bit disappointing that it is uncoupled from the grand narrative, which we'll get to in a moment here. But I think it is going to help both events. It's going to allow the championships to get bigger and get more, bring in more people to do their things, but also something like the grand narrative now can take over the entire event space, have hopefully more tickets, more people available, be an even bigger, more inclusive event. And it kind of stinks that, they're now two separate, so you don't get the cross-pollination, but maybe it'll put a spotlight on both events a little bit more. I also know that last year there were a bunch of people in the championships that were like, oh man, I would love to do the narrative, but I'm in the championships. So now there's events for people to do both.
That wasn't just last year. Every year there have been people that had said they would love to have done the narrative. Also, I think part of it is in the championships, once you've lost a game or two or three, then you're kind of feel like you're done. So
yeah,
I could see them looking for something else to do.
Yeah. Thankfully, there's nothing to do in Barcelona. It's kind of a barren city. There's not a lot of things to go do.
It's a good
and visit.
thing we don't have a lot of Spanish listeners. As I think if we did, we don't now.
Would love to go visit Barcelona. It's an awesome city. But yeah, so there will be stuff for people to do, which is nice. More stuff to do than in Atlanta. We'll put it that way.
And then besides that, besides the World's Champ, and again, to clarify, as you said, Kevin, the grand narrative staying in Atlanta.
Yeah.
So they want to say they're going to make it bigger and better. So, and it was already big and good. So
yes.
So we'll see what happens with that. But we also have our list of, we can't call them US Opens anymore because they're not all in the US. We have our list of Warhammer Open events for 2026, including the first ones in the UK. So we start off, we've already had Warhammer Open Palm Springs. That happened, I think, January?
Yes.
So moving forward in April on the 23rd through the 26th, Maastricht in the Netherlands. I'm probably pronouncing that horribly. That's kind of my thing. But we get a European Warhammer Open in the Netherlands. And then this one hurts. Memorial Day weekend.
Yep.
22nd through the 24th of May. The Warhammer Open in Dallas. Man, that's got a double sting for you, Dennis.
Yep. I mean, this is 2 years in a row. It's the exact same weekend as Midwest Conquest. And I would have loved to stay here for it because, I mean, I don't have to get a hotel. That saves on fees. So, but no, Kevin and I will be traveling up to Midwest Conquest to run our narrative. So, yeah.
MidwestConquest.com for more information.
Yeah, MidwestConquest.com. Also, another reason to go to Midwest Conquest, one thing they did state in the Dallas announcement is that there is no additional space. They cannot open up more tickets for Dallas. So once they're gone, they are gone. So if you do not think you're going to be able to make it in, I have another event you can possibly attend, and that would be Midwest Conquest up in Kansas City.
Well, and Kevin and I have been to that event space. It is, I'll say, it's very amazing. Tiny. I mean, it's a nice space, but I mean, it's tiny. It's built for esports because it's an actual esports arena where they've just cleared out the bottom floor. I mean, Texas Open I went to in January has more space than this esports arena.
Yeah.
Let's see. Moving on, a week later on the 29th through the 31st of May, they're in Birmingham, England.
I was really confused when I first saw this one because I was like, why are they going to Alabama? Oh, I am stupid.
No, you're American. We make that mistake all the time. That's okay. I did the same thing on the very last one they announced. So let's see. 19th through the 21st of June, Edmonton, Canada. Which, remember, if you were playing Age of Sigmar, you cannot bring Skaven. There are no rats allowed in Alberta.
Yeah.
July 17th through 19th, they returned to Tacoma, Washington for Warhammer Open there. Which I think they also did was it last year or the year before they were in Tacoma?
I think
they've been in Tacoma like every year, I think.
Yeah, I think even in the article it says 4 years in a row.
Yeah. Oh, yep. Yeah. And then finally, 13th through the 15th, Newport, Wales. So a second Warhammer Open in the UK in Newport, Wales.
And one thing I'll note about all those, they're all done by August. So that gives them plenty of times to prep for World Championship and narrative.
Yes. But I mean, that is a pretty packed schedule. That'll be 7 Warhammer Opens this year before, if you include Palm Springs, before the World Champs and the Grand Narrative. So that is a lot of events. They are really expanding their reach.
One a month, 2 in May.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
that is a wild schedule.
If you're in the area, and can go to one of these and can get tickets, highly recommend it. They're really fun events. There's a variety of different types of events. There's hobby events, even if you can't get into like the tournaments. There's one-day events, and you can do like, something like Underworlds or Necromunda one day and then do hobby events. The narrative events are great. Like, these are absolutely excellent events, and I highly recommend anybody who can go or thinks they might want to go to try to go if you can.
Yeah. No, totally agreed. I've been to KC twice when they've been here, and both times they're just absolutely fantastic. Just a really cool event. And those were relatively early on. I imagine they've really refined it and made it even bigger and better by this point. Speaking of bigger and better and new versions of older things, we also have some miniatures announcements that one really surprised me. And that was the fact that they are re-releasing Mutilators with a redesign. Chaos Mutilators, the melee-only version of Obliterators. Did not have that one on my bingo card for this year.
Well, what's even crazier to me is not only are they re-releasing Mutilators, but they actually made them look cool, which they never did before. Like, these are awesome models.
Well, the old ones were briefly metal, and then they were fine cast, and then they were gone, and nobody mourned them. But now, we've got these new plastic Mutilators, and while there's like 3 basic torsos, it does look like the arms can be changed between them, because I see they've got the close-up pictures of each of the 3, and then they've got a group picture of the 3 painted in Iron Warriors colors, and they have different arms attached. So at least you won't have the same Mutilators over and over again. There will be some variation, which is nice.
Well, and just in general, I like this style better than the other ones because the old Mutilators and the old Obliterators, to that matter, basically felt as if they were like lumps of flesh with like just guns poking out. These feel more like they are mutated Terminators. It's still kind of that standard Terminator heavy armor profile with a few weapons sticking out, you know, and a few weapons here and there. They look much more restrained, I guess, in their design than the old ones, and I think I think it works so much better.
Yeah, like I hadn't thought of the word restrained, but they're actually not nearly as spiky as I would have expected.
Yeah. And I like that. Like, I think it's really cool. I think these look as if they are, like I said, you know, mutated Terminators or, you know, something that used to be Imperial and was mutated and chaosed up a little bit rather than kind of like whatever the Mutilators were before, where they were just kind of like misshapen lumps of flesh and metal and stuff like that. And I like these. I just like these so much more.
Yeah, no, they do look really nice. And they do confirm there's an Eye of Terror book coming that these will be part of. And we've got a vague timeline of coming to a shelf near you within a few months or so.
Coming
along
soon.
with Kravik Morn, who is the Warsmith. I think we talked about either last episode or the episode before.
Yeah.
Who also looks really slick.
I like that they're kind of focusing on like the Iron Warriors and kind of giving like some of these heavier siege units out there. And I think it's just kind of a cool way of doing it. Which kind of goes into the next model I'm sure we're going to talk about.
Yes, in fact, that's where I was going next. This one also surprised me, but at least it's something that is still technically in print and is being used. The Defiler gets a glow up, and oh boy, does it get a glow up. That is it is a effective redesign. Like, this is not just we tweaked the old design. No, this is a complete rework.
It's on a base. It's on a base. It is a base.
I mean, they sell the base for it separately for like, I think $17.
Yeah, but
it's the largest base they make.
Base. It fits on this base.
It fits on the other base, but yeah, it's sold separately and you have to buy it. And yeah,
gosh, this is so cool.
Yeah, it's a completely different aesthetic than the old Defiler, because the Defiler traditionally has been like purely mechanical.
Yeah,
with like a little bit of there's a demon straining at like the little patch on the back, but otherwise it's been just a fully mechanical thing. This is definitely biomechanical the way most of the other demon engines are done now. And so like it fits the aesthetic of like the Mauler Fiend and the Forge Fiend and the Venom Crawler. And it definitely did not skip Ab Day. Also, they've added a lot more weapon options, because we've got there's definitely still the autocannon that it had before. You've got the battle cannon for the torso. There's a twin link las cannon, which they never had an option for on the kit, but the unit could take it. There's dual heavy flamers, but they've also, and there's still the looks like the Defiler Scourge and the Defiler Claws are still on the legs. But I'm also seeing options for dual twin-linked las cannons, a plasma gun on the arm, a missile launcher on the arm, which I'm assuming is going to be better than just a Havoc launcher.
Yeah, I hope so.
And then also a plasma cannon for the torso as well. So lots of weapon options we didn't have there. Different carapace options. You've got one that has like a metal rack on the back for mounting trophies, but you've also got a couple of you've got a smooth carapace option, a carapace option with the traditional Chaos Star on it. And we know those because there are also god-specific head options. There's a generic horned helmet option. There's an Iron Warrior style skull head. And then there's also heads for World Eaters, Thousand Sons, Death Guard, and Emperor's Children, which is nice because Emperor's Children don't have the Defiler in their codex.
Right.
Yet. Maybe this is a sign.
I hope so.
It would be nice. Also, I just noticed looking at this thing, the Defiler now also has nipple guns.
Yeah, it does.
Yep, it sure does.
No, this is such a cool redesign.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it's quite Titanic. It looks like it's probably about as tall as an Armiger, maybe slightly taller, depending on how it's posed. Because they do also have a couple of variety poses where the legs are a little bit more spread out versus being kind of like more hunched up. The Iron Warriors one they show seems like a little bit picked up and taller. So I'm guessing there's going to be a couple of different lower torso options. So lots of variety in builds, which is also good to see. Lots of weapon configurations. I hesitate to guess how magnet moddable that will be, though. Some of these do not look like they will magnet mod well at all.
I don't know. I think the weapon arms look like they're like you'll have some flexibility there. I don't know about like the center gun, but I think you could probably. I think there's ways you could do the arms.
Yeah, we'll see.
So,
I don't want to necessarily say impossible, but it looks like it might be. We'll have to see how the kit's put together. It's far too early to say.
Well, like I know that the Forge Fiend and stuff like that, like it takes a little bit of work, but it is pretty. Once you kind of figure it out, it's pretty easily magnetizable. Even though it doesn't necessarily look like it. Like it might be rather like I'm kind of looking at the arms because like the new Hellbrute, it's like 8 years old at this point. Also has kind of the same style of arms, and it's not necessarily the weapon points that you swap out, it's more like the shoulder points. So like certain shoulder joints go with certain weapons, but then you can kind of swap them out where they attach to the torso. And that's kind of what this seems like it looks like to me. So it might take a little bit of work, but I think there's going to be some flexibility in this kit. I hope there'll be some flexibility in this kit. Maybe I'm just wish listing.
I'm sure there will be some. I'm just curious to see.
Yeah.
Like I'm curious to see how it's put together and how much you can maximize one purchase, because I'm sure this is going to be an expensive kit too.
Yeah, I do like that. This is like I said, this is in line with the Hellbrute, the Mauler Fiend, the Venom Crawler. The Defiler doesn't feel like so much of an outlier anymore, because that old kit was 24, 25 years old. It had been passed up. So this is super cool. I'm really excited to see this kit.
I also have to wonder what this means for a unit in the Demon Codex, the Soul Grinder, because with the Soul Grinder being built on the old Defiler kit, I wonder if we will see that unit finally retired.
Maybe.
Because it's a unit that no longer fits the aesthetic. We know demons have been kind of getting downplayed. We will be talking about that somewhat in our second part of the show. But also for Age of Sigmar, it doesn't really fit the aesthetic there either.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
What, Sigmar doesn't have giant monster robots?
Not as much.
Not exactly. No, not that style. No.
Again, like I don't know that this will happen. I could potentially see a way where you kind of see like the base, and then there's like the little bit of a chest section, and then the Defiler top sets on top of that. If they really wanted to be clever with this, I could see a scenario where they could replace the top part with the Soul Grinder and make it sort of a dual kit. I just don't know that they will. Because of all the points you're saying, like it would be a Demon's kit that really wouldn't fit the Sigmar aesthetics, and I don't know that they're focusing as much on Demons anymore.
I think even the lower torso, it's got too much pistons and cabling. It would be a hard sell to make that. No,
I agree. Like
Sigmar.
Yeah, I don't think it would necessarily work, so I don't think they would do it. But I could see a way that this could be a dual kit, if they really wanted to try to keep that. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know that that's going to happen.
Yeah, my guess is probably not, but we can talk about some of that later in the show. But that is not the only thing. We've definitely got some horrific chaos biomechanical models, but don't worry, we have horrific Imperial biomechanical models too. Let's not forget the body hoarder that is the Adeptus Mechanicus. The forces that will be fighting against Kravik Morn in this Eye of Terror campaign setting box, whatever it's going to be coming up, they're going to be led by our second named, well, technically third named if you include, what was it, Daedalus 09, the techno-archaeologist from, before when he had a name. Yeah. But as far as 40k and the current codex, this will be our second named Mechanicus character, Thulia Gold, Archmagos Terminus of Mars. And
okay. I will say this, and I will separate it out for a moment here so you can cut it when you decide that you don't want to include it in the episode. I can't believe GW went all woke and put a woman tech marine. Okay, go on. Sorry. Because clearly she's so like womanly. It's distracting. Sorry.
She got that big booty. and no, I mean, those jokes were made, like somebody posted the GIF of the giant red booty robot from the old movie Robots in our Discord. It's like, yeah, but also just like all joking aside. And no, first off, she's a woman. You can tell, ?
Right. Yeah,
it's exactly. Like, I think the only bits of vaguely human I see is like one arm and the top of her face.
Yeah, it is a biotechnical monstrosity, which is awesome.
But yeah, it's along the lines of the kind of weird mechanical flesh combination that you see with like Belisarius Cawl, although not quite so centipedal. But I do like the front legs that look similar to those from like an Onager Dunecrawler. Like I see a lot of the Mechanicus just in the various parts of it. It's carrying over that entire Mechanicus design language. So I really do like that. Everything is just utterly insane in a very good, like weird sci-fi tech way, like almost a 50s style ray gun sci-fi tech way.
I love when Adeptus Mechanicus and Necron models get really freaking weird, like, with the humanoid shape, because it's like, if you're going to be a robot, if you're going to be this, upgraded, technical monstrosity, you don't have to stay in humanoid form. That's not the best form for some things. So yeah, let's get weird with it. Let's put robot legs. Let's do, claws and extra arms and weird stuff. And I love that. I think that's awesome.
Yeah. No, she is an awesome looking model. I'm excited to see what her rule set is going to be. And I also like the description of how she sees herself as being shaped by the machine god into an instrument for conduct of war, and feels that Belisarius Cawl wastes too much time on diplomacy and research. It's like, look, I can be a living weapon. The Omnissiah has made me into a living weapon, so I'm going to go blow things up. Stop wasting your time. In turn, Cawl and his ilk accuse Thule of seeing no value in knowledge if it cannot be applied to blowing up more heretics. And in fairness, they're absolutely right. She sees no value in knowledge if it can't be weaponized. But then on top of that, they added heavy weapons Skitarii, the Hastari. And these guys also look great.
Yeah. Yeah, they kind of like, I feel like they harken back a little bit to the Heresy era, like Sola Auxiliary a little bit with like the helmets and stuff and like the style of Carapace armor, which is cool. Like it's a unique profile for them, while still maintaining, the built-in, like, arm guns and stuff like that. So, yeah, these guys look cool.
And they did specify both Ulia Gold and her Legions of Hastari will be joining 40K alongside the new Defiler, Mutilators, and Iron Warriors. Believe it or not, that's still not all that will be joining us for the next big expansion. So there is more coming. This is going to be a big release for at least both armies, if not a third one that hasn't been revealed as part of this yet.
Well, James Workshop has been promising Zotes.
It's true. We've been promised Zotes for a while.
Hey, we got a Zote model. We shouldn't be greedy.
Yeah, but
you can't buy it anymore, but it was promised.
Time for Codex Zotes or Codex, or you pair it up with the Maelstrom model and like Codex Alien Weirdos or something.
I mean, Tau is supposed to be that.
Yeah,
right.
Tau, yeah. Theoretically, it should be. But yeah, there's a lot coming down the pipe, and this isn't even like, let's see, if they say in a few months, they're either dropping this right before 11th. I don't think this is launch box stuff.
If they go with the same traditional like build up that they've been doing for previous editions, I would guess this is going to come out in March or April. Mm-hmm. And then because when is Adepticon? It's in March. It's like mid-March.
I believe so. No,
that's typically when they announce, like when they do the reveal of the new edition, because that's what they did it in 9th and 10th edition. They did that big announcement at Adepticon, and then they had like 2 months to build up hype and stuff like that. So assuming they're following the same process, which there's no way, this is just looking at trends. I have no inside information. I would say that we're going to get probably something in March, maybe something in April. So 2 more books, narrative books. And then, we'll get the launch box in May.
Yeah,
which is
right
cool.
at Midwest Conquest time, right?
It traditionally, that's we had what the last games of 7th edition, I think.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's actually kind of nice for us to have like the Memorial Day weekend, because it is one of the last rounds before the new edition, and it does seem like there's a big like refresh of energy. People excited to kind of send off the previous edition and then look forward to the new one, and we don't have to learn new rules. It's kind of the best of both worlds.
Well, yeah, because so Adepticon is March 25th through 29th, so last weekend of March.
Okay.
So yeah, I would not be surprised if we see an announcement there about the next edition. And yeah, I could see either Eye of Terror dropping around that same time or maybe a week or two after.
Yeah.
And then because when 9th edition switched over to 10th, I remember we were at Midwest Conquest and also trying to track what was going on, because they had preview games going in Dallas. So, yeah, we're kind of, we're in, I don't want to say uncharted territory, because as you said, there's trends that we have seen in the past, but we're in a new era. And I think this is the first one where we haven't seen the big, like, oh, this is obviously the big narrative event leading up to it. We're seeing lots of different narrative events, as we talked about last time, that is an intentional decision that Games Workshop is making.
Which I kind of like having the narrative be more broad spaced, because sure, it doesn't like drive to a singular focus, but they're wanting to give players the opportunity to forge their own narratives. And the best way to do that is give you all the little areas that you could have places.
And I think also, other than the Gathering Storm, the switch from 7th to 8th edition, which was, I think, the first of the big, like, hey, the edition is changing, here's the narrative update. Because before that, we just get a new edition and it would just be like, okay, yeah, everything's just, same status quo. At most, you get like a Necron, oh, we rewrote the entire fluff, but it's always been this way. Pay no attention to what was in the past. 7th edition to 8th edition was the first big narrative event. I think that is the first one that has had real changes where it felt like something really had changed.
Yes.
In the setting. I feel like Psychic Awakening from 8th to 9th was kind of a disappointment. Now, granted, we also had a pandemic to deal with, but even then, it's like they laid down like all this stuff was happening, all these new Psychers were being born, etc., and then just nothing came of it. It just felt like
that hasn't really paid off. Yeah.
Right. Arcs of Omen, other than the return of Lionel Johnson and Angron getting a model and kind of getting back on the field, like those were big things. But again, it doesn't feel like they've had quite the narrative impact that we would expect. Like they're there, they do impact the narrative, but it's not a big change.
It had a huge narrative impact for me because it allowed me to create my army and, run on that for like 3 years. But yes, yeah, like overall, like to the big major narrative for the hobby, yeah, it doesn't seem like it's just been part of like the updates to the existing status quo, not nearly the impact that oh gosh, the 7th edition one. You just said the name of
Gathering
it. I blanked
Storm.
on it now. Gathering Storm. Thank you. I'm like, what was the name of that? I was like, Pariah Nexus. That's not right. I swear I pay attention when we record. I really do.
Well, and even the Pariah Nexus stuff going into 9th edition and the 10th and the 4th Tyrannic War with the start of 10th edition don't feel like they've had quite the narrative impacts that you would think like a big launch event would have. And they've definitely had repercussions. There have been things brought up, but it doesn't feel like everything feels kind of like I don't want to say a disappointment, but it feels far less impactful than the big change from 7th to 8th. And so I think maybe leaning into that and saying, okay, yeah, we're doing smaller spot narrative events around the galaxy. And yeah, like you said, allowing people to make their own narrative with the tools that are presented there.
Yeah, because the galaxy is a big place. It's hard to make an event big enough for everyone to kind of be affected by it.
Right. And you still, like, it is still an ongoing existing war game, so you want to set the stage for an event and then kind of not have it, let it play out in the games, so you still, you want to advance the plot a little bit, but you can't advance it too much because then you resolve the Fourth Tyrannic War, and okay, what are Tyranids fighting for? So yeah, it's an interesting.
Tyranids are fighting for biomass. I mean, even
they're hungry.
Yeah, but that's the thing. It's like you can't ever really resolve that event.
I mean,
you can't really.
There are some major events that could, like,
yeah.
If they, like we said, if they'd fractured the Imperium, which we talked about our idea last edition, or if the Emperor is finally revealed as a god, that would fracture things and shake things up. Yep. Or if they reveal what the Silent King saw at past the galaxy's edge.
Yeah, because hasn't it been said that it's not that at first it was like, well, he saw the Tyranids, but now there's the thought that the Tyranids are running from something.
Yeah, it's been implied that whatever the Silent King saw and came back wasn't the Tyranids, it was something else. GW probably doesn't know what it was,
Right.
No, they're just keeping it open for future options.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Which is good. That's how you build this kind of weird open narrative story that like can span a bunch of things, but you still have to leave questions open, for future stuff. So it's interesting. It's an interesting narrative, like, storytelling method for what they're doing. But yeah, you have to answer questions and leave questions open to let players figure it out.
Right. And that leads us into our guesses at what's going to happen in 11th edition. But before
we'll get new models and throw dice.
Well, yes, that's it. That is extremely likely. Very,
Sweet.
very
My guess is win.
One thing that I did want to mention real quick, because it came up, I think, in the last day or two, there's also announced that there's going to be a new Viper kit.
Oh, no, we knew that. We talked about that.
Did we talk about that? Okay. But
it's the exact same one that's in the Corsair.
They showed more details, though, and like with the cool like swivel turret and stuff like that. And like, I don't know, I think that just looks cool.
I like the looks, but the thing I like best about it is technically it's a dual kit.
Right, because it makes the Corsair Star whatever vehicle.
But even more than that, you can just flip the turret back and forth, and you don't have to magnetize or anything. You have both of them in one vehicle option, which I thought was a brilliant move.
Yeah, I think that's super cool. Hopefully they do that with more kits going forward if they can.
I love that they just posted a GIF of that entire process. Yeah, exactly. I'm just like watching them, like, yeah, just like, this pleases me. This makes my brain happy just to watch that animation back and forth.
Exactly. Okay. Well, anyway, I saw that. I saw they posted that update, and I was like, oh, I want to mention that at least.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will. Yeah, that same kit makes a Starfang. So, theoretically, especially if you can magnetize the guns on it, you could make it into, like, they say that you know, whether you pick one or the other. But I do like also the fact that you can even make the Starfang with the forward-facing turret, because that was one of the things where it's like, well, it always has a rear gunner. Nah, it can be either way you want.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, it is a nice looking kit, and it is an interesting upgrade to the old Viper design. So
for sure.
But yeah, we are going to be talking about our predictions and how likely we think they are to come to pass for 11th edition. But before we do that, we have to take a break for sponsors. And yes, this show is ad supported. But if you would like to support the show directly, there's actually 3 great ways you can do that. First off is you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/preferred enemies. This gets you access to an ad-free version of the show, as well as access to our Discord. And yes, I understand Discord has been in the news lately for not great reasons. As of right now, we are keeping our Discord, mostly because it is the one platform that has the best integration with Patreon, so that we can give direct access to our subscribers to this. I have been kind of looking around to see if there are alternatives. That's still very early on, very preliminary. But for right now, we are definitely still on Discord. And if you want to join that Discord, you can join the Preferred Enemies Patreon, and that gets you access, like I said, to the ad-free feed, access to the Discord, which is a lovely community that we have here, any exclusive material we put together, and also your name in the credits of our YouTube show. So again, that's patreon.com/preferred enemies. We don't have any tiers. It's just $1 a month. Basically, think of it as an online tip jar. We don't lock any of our episodes behind a paywall. And so if you just want to help support the show, if enough people put in $1, it really does add up and help out. Second, I mentioned we have a YouTube channel. That's at youtube.com/@preferredenemies. And it's basically the video version of the podcast. We upload the audio with some video elements mixed in. And again, we're just trying to get the show out in front of as many people as we can. And so if you can go there and subscribe, like the videos, comment, help us feed the algorithm and get the show in front of more people, we really do appreciate that. Third is our merch store, preferredenemies.com/merch, where you can buy t-shirts, hats, stickers, mugs with the Preferred Enemies logo and other designs. And again, we just love seeing our stuff out in the world. And by buying that merch, you help us collect funds to hopefully give to other artists to make more merch and put more designs out there. So we can also support the artistic community as well, because this is not our day job. This is something we do because we enjoy it, and we love being part of the community. And so we want to be able to put some of those resources back into the community as well. Like I said, we're going to take a quick break for our sponsors, and when we come back, it's time to look into the crystal ball and guess what's coming in 11th edition. See you in a bit. And we're back. That means it's time to get into our main topic, which is predictions about 11th edition. So we've put together a list of an increasingly growing list as our document is being edited in real time, but at least a dozen or just like a dozen or so things that we think could or might not happen with 11th edition. And we're going to discuss them and decide how likely or unlikely we think they are. Now, basically, we're going to have 4 options: very likely, likely, unlikely, very unlikely. Why is there no middle point, no opinion? We're not doing any fence sitting here.
Aw, I like fence setting.
Now, I will say these are not based on rumors. Anything we discuss here, this is not based on, hey, we heard, or there's chatter online, or this, that, or the other thing. There may be chatter online about some of this. I don't know. We have not scoured the internet to find out what people are talking about. This is also not based on any insider information. Straight up, we do not have any information at this point about 11th edition other than it most likely is happening this year. Just want to put that out there. This is not like we are not playing inside baseball here. We are not rumor mongering. Please do not take these as rumors. These are our opinions. They have absolutely no basis in real fact other than watching trends, seeing how things have been playing out, and kind of guessing what we think is likely to happen.
That said, if you do want to take these rumors and like start posting them online and like put them back to us and assign them to us to get more traffic and more people to listen to the podcast, I'm totally okay with that. We're just not going to do that.
Yeah, we're not going to do that. Also, don't go to Polymarket with this. This is not investment advice. So,
Oh, gosh.
Oh, boy.
yeah, that's a thing we have to talk about these days. Anyway. So I will say there may be a little bit of wish listing discussed, but I would like to try to keep our answers to, while we would like if we may say we would like something to happen, but then decide whether it is likely or not. My God, the list keeps getting longer as I sit here. What have I done, unleashed upon them? I should never have given you edit rights.
You told us to put some things in here. And
I
so
did. I have only myself to blame.
That is true. That is true.
Yours are more generic and ours are more targeted.
Faction specific, yes.
Yes.
Look, if you wanted control over this, you didn't have to have 3 co-hosts. Just saying.
This is true. I could just talk to myself.
But this is more fun chaos.
I agree.
Exactly.
I agree. This is more enjoyable. It's probably better to listen to. But anyway, so starting off, we're going to start with a big one. So first guess, 11th edition is a major rewrite on par of the 7th to 8th or the 9th to 10th transitions of the game. How likely do we think this is?
I'm thinking unlikely. I think there'll be changes and tweaks, but I think they're happy with the way the system is. So there'll be changes, but it's not going to be a major rewrite.
No, I agree. I think, in fact, I would go so far as to say very unlikely. I do think there will be changes that will definitely change how people approach army building, what units are good, that we always get that with an edition change.
Wait, Vespid are going to be good?
No, well, I wouldn't go
Vespid actually.
Actually, Vespid aren't bad right now.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think this is highly unlikely. Like, we're not going to get changes that invalidate all of the existing codexes and like index edition 40K again. We might in 12th edition, because it does seem like they're on like a 2 edition cycle, but I think it's highly unlikely that we're going to get that level of change this time out, just because they would burn so much goodwill, or whatever goodwill is left, with the community if they're like, yeah, every 3 years you have to rebuy every codex and the game is completely different. I don't think that's sustainable at all, and I think they understand that.
I think there's, like, I know a lot of players who have started with 10th edition.
Same.
And I have a feeling that if they completely gutted that community by ditching everything, and obviously as old heads, we can kind of warn people, hey, that has happened a couple of times. We've had 3 instances in the history. Well, I'm not going to include the change from 1st to 2nd edition because Rogue Trader is its own beast entirely. But 2nd to 3rd edition was a huge rewrite. 7th to 8th edition was a huge rewrite. 9th to 10th edition was a huge rewrite. But I find it unlikely, that we'll see that same massive change. That's not to say, like, obviously we had enough changes between 4th and 5th and 6th and 7th that there were major balance changes and the way people approach the game changed. But the core mechanics were still mostly the same. So, yeah, I find the major rewrite theory very unlikely.
The other thing I would say why I think it's highly unlikely too is just looking at the other games that GW has put out right now. None of them are really going through like major structural rewrites, which tends to be a precursor or like a, hey, Sigmar is leaning towards this way, or Lord of the Rings is heading this way. That kind of tends to be a portent of major changes in 40K, and I'm not seeing any of that right now.
Yeah, now 4th edition Age of Sigmar was a massive rewrite. Like that one was a big change in how rules were, especially how rules are presented. But we'll see if they bring that mentality. Up until now, though, like we've had like 3rd edition Age of Sigmar hasn't had that much impact on 40K design, and I have a feeling like I don't think. Because there's a lot of people who kind of like them being separate games, separate mechanically. So I don't know how much Age of Sigmar will impact 40K's design at this point. Second one, that one went pretty quickly, and I agree. I was like, I don't think there's any. I think they found things that work. I don't see them changing the detachment system right now. I think they like how the detachment system works. I think fans generally like how the detachment system works. Could some of the detachments be reworked? Sure, but I think overall the basics, what they gave us at 10th worked. Yeah, what they told us they were going to do at 10th has played out. So I think it's a good set of mechanics.
I could see tweaks to like the detachments to require you or encourage you to take more battle line troops in, just across the board. So like there may be functions like changes to how objectives work or how battle line interacts with certain things, actions, things like that. But yeah, I don't think it's going to be a huge rewrite, but I think there'll be some tweaks to try to encourage different play styles and different things. So
yeah. Right, moving on to our second one. This is another big one. 40K goes primarily digital. And what I mean by that is rules will be primarily rules and like unit entries and things, detachments, etc. The things you need to actually play the game becoming primarily available through digital downloads or the app or what have you. But that becomes the primary way to access, as opposed to right now where it is the codex is the primary way to access anything, and any digital access you have on top of that is through having the physical codex.
Very, very, very unlikely. I don't see them changing their model.
I won't say very unlikely. I will say unlikely because I think you're right. I don't think they're going to change their model, but I do think that economic pressures will force them to embrace digital more. And that's my hope is that, yes, this primarily goes digital. I don't think they'll primarily go digital. My hope is they open the digital vaults and the pathways a little bit more. And I think even that would be a huge step forward. I don't know that they will, but yeah. I don't think it'll primarily go digital, but hopefully they just make things more, there's the new Black Library app that just came out. That's a step in the right direction. If they can do that type of stuff for their other games, digital's rules distribution, updates, stuff like that, that's all a step in the right direction. I don't think they'll be primarily digital, but I think hopefully they will they'll continue in that direction.
So while part of me, like the part of me that looks at the pure economics of it, definitely goes with Kevin and says unlikely. And this is where I would love to have a fence-sitting option, but I don't. So I'm going to break with the pact and say likely. And the reason I'm saying this is over the past 2 or 3 years, we have seen, especially with the update cycle, the quarterly rebalancing, the quarterly set of new detachments that get released, the new units and the updated units that are now only available in faction packs, and the consolidation of everything for a particular faction into a faction pack PDF that's downloadable. I could honestly see a version of 40K where, yes, physical books are still a thing, but I have a feeling that they're wanting to move away from that for a couple of reasons. First off, having everything tied to codex purchases, and in the past it kind of was like, if in past editions, if you wanted new units to be released for an army, they pretty much had to either come out with a book that paired with it or a new version of the codex. Like a new codex comes out, we're going to drop a bunch of new models, we're going to do an army revamp and we have had that, although in 10th edition we had a lot of armies where they might drop a new model, like a new character.
And when they did that, they would put the rules for that model in the instruction booklet in the box.
Well, they do that, but it's the stripped down, no language, just the weapon stats. But yeah. But what we have seen over the last several months now is we've seen detachments being released for 500 worlds and Into the Maelstrom, with like all the detachments were just made available for free to download off the website. All the new units made available in their faction packs. Units whose rules have been replaced in their, for example, Raptors and Warp Talons got updated rules because there's the new Kill Team box that had updated that kit. They got new rules in the Chaos Space Marine faction pack. That's not being presented as an errata to the existing datasheet. It doesn't say, hey, in the datasheet, add this ability, change the stats. No, it's just new datasheet. New units, like when kill teams get added to the 40K roster, they just drop in new data sheets, and they'll drop in new data sheets for multiple factions sometimes. Like, hey, the new Death Watch came out, we're going to drop them in the Imperial Agents faction pack. We're going to drop them in the Death Watch faction pack. Like we're seeing these being released directly, and I think what this does is it frees their release cycle to be able to do a constant flow of miniatures and just get those rules out in front of people. It allows them to add new detachments on the fly when they need to. It allows them to, if they do it with online releases, like we've already seen some of the detachments that they've released alongside either Grotmus or the balance, when Balance Data Slate comes out and they're like, okay, now here's 3 new detachments for factions. We've already seen some of those tweaked and edited for balance, which that was something that was far more cumbersome to do when it's a codex detachment, because then the codex detachment, they just have to say, okay, well, all right, replace this paragraph with that paragraph. Now in the faction packs, if they update something, they say, hey, here's the notes. We changed this, we changed this, we changed this. And you can just go to the document and get the full updated version. It makes putting out new rules easier for them. It makes putting out new models easier for them. And it allows people to have access. I think the faction pack is one of the better revisions they've made, where all your stuff is available. Your FAQs, your Legends data sheets, your Forge World data sheets, and any new units and new detachments are just available in a single download, which is something we had been complaining about, that, hey, this stuff is scattered all over the place. They're kind of finding the right ways to deploy that. And like, they didn't have to make the 500 worlds and Maelstrom detachments and unit rules free. They could have just put those in those books. Now, granted, that would have also had meant they would have had to print more copies of those books, which they didn't. I know this because obviously 500 worlds sold out. I have apparently managed to get my hands on a Maelstrom, just barely. Maelstrom sold out the first day. But like, from an economic standpoint, they can put out models alongside these smaller book releases. Mm-hmm. I would like them to put out more digital options for some of those book releases, but they can release models and give the rules to everyone so that people, because that's where they make their money, is people buying the models. Yeah. So anything that expands their reach to be able to do that is good. And I think moving to a primarily digital model, even if it ends up being like through the app and through a Warhammer Plus subscription, that is still an improvement over what we currently have.
I don't disagree with you, and I think I think we're making a lot of the same points. I guess my quibble with this question is primarily, like, I think they will continue on this track. I think they will release more things. I still think they think of themselves as a legacy book publisher, though. Like, I think things are still going to be tied around the same like cycle of release with books and updates and things like that, primarily. And then, yeah, you'll see more and more stuff on the side. And hopefully they'll have more digital options for being able to buy codexes or buy updates directly in the app without, through digital codes and digital distribution. But I still think their primary method of getting this stuff out is going to be physical books.
I will say my counter to all that, we want something digital, and that's why we can't have it, because we can't have good things.
I mean, that
is fair.
Yeah.
I'm going to stay possibly overly optimistic and say likely, in that is like, at least as far as delivering, maybe, if I put a caveat on, it's delivering rules accessible to match play. I do think even with a primarily digital model, a lot of things like campaign books would still be primarily paper.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And codexes, if you just change codexes to lore books, it's something we've talked about, or just do like special, like the physical codex becomes a collector's item, and people will eat that up. That's still a thing they'll sell.
Like I said, I agree with you. I want this to happen. I want this model to be what they do. I just think that's such a huge company-wide shift. It's not going to happen all at once. Like, I think you will see them build towards that, but I don't think we're at the tipping point yet.
See, I think to Rob's point, I think they have been slowly building this behind the scenes. We just don't see it because they, like he said, Black Library coming out, putting more stuff in the app. But I just know that it's a nice thing I want, and thus I can't have it, and thus I don't think they're going to make any changes.
Yeah, that's fair. That is fair.
Yeah. I think there's also something to be said for supply chain issues that, have kind of forced them into, more digital things. And if supply chain issues get kind of resolved in the future, will they go back to more primarily print, or just stay with this more digital?
They'll move to psychic, where they'll just make a rules change and then we'll all just know.
I mean, to be honest with you, the grand narrative, that's kind of what I was doing my army rules for, because I was like half remembering parts of the lore and parts of the rules, so it could kind of work.
You just running on vibes, huh?
But yeah, we're gonna vibe codex. Oh God, I hate myself. Yeah, God damn it. Okay, sorry.
No, you're fine.
God damn it.
All right. Yeah, no, Richard, you bring up a good point with like supply chains. I think that's like some of the current issues definitely encourage digital releases primarily and keeping print runs smaller. Yeah, so I'm going to stick with likely. Maybe I'll say maybe not at the top. Maybe 11th edition doesn't start off with like, hey, we're not printing codexes anymore. But maybe I think through the lifetime, through a 3-year lifetime, I think you look at the 40K environment in 2029, and I think distribution of rules and such is going to be done very differently than we've seen in the past. I think. By the way,
you saying that made my back hurt. Like I was like, oh my back. I don't want to think about 2029.
I could see the data card packs going away.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I have straight up told people those are bad purchases.
Yeah.
Moving on to the next one. So this one, it's kind of spurred by some things that we've seen in other rules we've reviewed recently. War gear costs returning. In the sense of in the past, every unit had to have, like in past editions, every unit had to have all their war gear pointed out manually, like to buy on a model by model basis. 10th edition had basically every unit just kind of glommed together into a single cost. And that has led to some weirdness of units having to be split into 2 units because they couldn't balance the cost between 2 different weapon options. Or some weapons. Sometimes you're always going to take the optimal choice because why wouldn't you? Do we think that changes in 11th edition?
I will go to the likely here, and which is odd because I think this is something I want, so I should say it's unlikely because of that. But I think people have been complaining about it enough, and they did that switch to like the generic Crusade level thing, and that's what kind of drove generic points for just units in general. So I don't think we'll see it on every data sheet, but I think we'll maybe on like some leaders, and maybe the Maelstrom Build Your Own Commander was a hint at some of that.
Yeah.
Maybe some units will have just 1 or 2 bigger weapons that cost more. So, but I don't think it'll be as granular as it was, but I think it'll be something.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's unlikely that we're going to get war gear costs for every unit. I think most units are just going to remain the way they are right now. I think, and skipping ahead in the list a little bit, I think the Crucible of Champions stuff for leaders is going to be a bigger feature going forward, and you have more customization for characters and for some units to be like, okay, my lord, or my chaos lord or my captain, I can go in and I can customize and I can add points and I can tweak and I can build my own guy that way. But like my standard intercessor squad, no, it's going to be X points and that's it. Because I don't think GW wants to get back to the fiddly, 1 point upgrade for grenades and, 2 point upgrade to swap out bolters with, rapid fire bolters. I don't think they want to get to that point. I think they want to streamline most of the unit design. But I think there are certain places where like characters or potentially vehicles like knights, things like that, where you would put in point differentials and kind of a block thing of like, okay, yeah, upgrade this weapon, upgrade this option, do whatever. But I think they'll keep it very limited. So I don't think it's coming back on units. I think you're going to see more of the Crucible of Champions stuff apply maybe a little bit more broadly.
Yeah, I tend to also agree, and I could see it to a point where instead of the relic equipment upgrade things being on a detachment level, they could have more of those and move them out to just an army-wide thing.
Mm-hmm. Could see that, yeah. Like being able to, like, I can upgrade... So for example, like for Orks, I can upgrade all my boys to have sustained hits 1 when a WA is called.
Yeah.
As like it just an upgrade across the board. Anything with this keyboard just gets this ability. Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
Could see that. Yeah, I'm thinking that if we do see it, yeah, I do agree that we're not going to see the fiddly point building. And I know some people loved the fiddly point building.
Yeah.
But I also know the current point, like current army construction rules are actually very popular with people who started 10th. Like people who this is the environment they got into. They're like, oh, this is so easy. But I think you could see things like, hey, if you take a Lehman Russ, and right now there's like 6 different Lehman Russ data sheets, not including the commander. But the fact that the commander can be built out of any Lehman Russ, I could definitely see like the Lehman Russ commander saying like, he's this cost, but if you put this gun on him, like if you put the Eradicator cannon on him, yeah, then it adds 10 points. Or if you take a Lehman Russ, if you take sponsons, it doesn't matter which sponson weapon, but if you add sponsons, an extra 15 points or something, like just to kind of like give you a little bit of area where you could tweak something where something isn't always going to be like, I'm going to load it with every weapon possible because there's no reason not to, but something where you do have a little bit of opportunity cost and a little bit of way to spend maybe those extra 10 points, or maybe I need to shed 10 points. So maybe I don't put sponsons on it so I can fit in a little bit more or get one more enhancement on somebody. A little bit of that I think would come back. I could definitely see that level of army building and tweaking coming back. But yeah, very limited, definitely not on a model by model basis, except on vehicles. And even then, not every weapon being pointed out separately, just being like, hey, the cost is generally this, except for like, if you take this option, it's a little bit more because that's just a better option. And then you actually get a little bit of army building and a little bit of choice. And I think that could hit the sweet spot for a lot of people. So I would say likely. I would agree likely that war gear costs could return in some limited fashion. All right, next up, Crusade, the primary narrative set of rules in current 10th edition 40K, gets removed. And I put this up there because the last 2 narrative sets we saw had nothing for Crusade in them. No mention of it whatsoever.
This is where I want to put a caveat, because I'm either likely or unlikely based on one thing. If they go digital, I would say it's unlikely to be removed because that's probably what the books will be more about. If they keep the books, I will say likely to get removed because I think they're looking at new ways of handling it.
Yes. I definitely think they're redesigning whatever narrative play is. I think Crusade as we know it probably goes away. So I think that's likely that Crusade goes away. I think what's more likely is we get like narrative books or narrative releases that maybe apply more generally to allow you to do campaigns and narrative play in a structured format, but it won't be in every individual codex. It won't be in every book. You won't get, these faction specific versions of it. You'll have like, the Maelstrom book or the 500 Worlds, where it's like, hey, this is a way to do this type of campaign. Here's all of the specifics for this in one book, and it's not faction specific the way that the Crusade stuff was. Because I think largely Crusade doesn't work. It's too complicated. But I think there's some ideas in there.
Complicated. I think it's the whole narrative of Crusade, because like the Tyranid Crusade rules are let's go devour a sector. Yeah. Towers, let's go conquer a sector. I mean, and then while Emperor's Children is let's go make drugs to make us better.
Yeah. I think it's highly likely all of that goes away. Like, right. I just don't see how that's going to continue. Yeah.
Doesn't match if you're trying to play together. So I think the only way they can get that work is with the new the new narrative styles we're seeing, as opposed to the individual faction ones.
Yeah, I think this is very likely that Crusade as we know it, it's just going to be gone. Like we're going to have, if they have something called Crusade, it's going to be different.
Yeah, I am on the very likely side of Crusade getting removed. I do think we'll have narrative stuff going forward. I don't think narrative goes away. I think narrative has proven to be very popular. I think Crusade less so, and I think the promises that they kind of made with Crusade going into 9th edition when they first unveiled it have not panned out. Like the idea, like any game can be a Crusade game if your opponent agrees to it, or you can always be earning experience points for Crusade game. No, not really.
think that's exactly, they designed it that way so you and your opponent could be totally doing different things, or you could be doing Crusade and them not. But that's not the way people play narratives.
No, it's not. And as you mentioned, Dennis, like the scope of what each army is doing for Crusade is wildly different. They don't interact at all. It adds a lot of extra bookkeeping that is just a pain in many cases. It doesn't work over short events terribly well, but it also over long events.
Yeah, like even mechanically, if you're playing it over a long event, if you're winning your narrative, the power scale for like what you're due, you run away and the gap gets even bigger. So like it doesn't even really work in like a longer campaign format under the current system, because if you start winning, you spiral, you run away, and you keep increasing the power gap. So
I mean, there's supposed to be rules for that. They just aren't very well balanced.
Yeah, they just don't work.
So yeah, I think Crusade as it currently is goes away. I could see them doing maybe one or two something of variant to give you some options that are narrative only, like, hey, here's a detachment. It is not meant for matched play. It is a narrative detachment. I could see maybe something like that. I don't know how likely that is, but I definitely think it's very likely Crusade gets removed. Also, the fact that we are 6 years into Crusade being a thing and there's never been any official app support.
Mm-hmm.
Which
that is something I'd still love to see.
I would love to see it, but the great thing about like the stuff from 500 Worlds and Maelstrom and such is if you're using the Warhammer app to do your army building, which a lot of people do, or they use some variation of that, you don't need to do all the unit by unit tracking and tracking blessings and honors and things like that. It's just you're just playing an army. You just build the army you want to build. You don't have to worry about having a roster ahead of time or anything like that. Could you have a narrative format that, like a one-off narrative format that kind of does that? Sure. But I don't think it's I don't think it's a core feature of the game, and it's definitely not in every codex. I don't think 11th edition continues with Crusade.
Yeah. And I think that's, in some ways, that's a good thing, because I think it allows narrative events to differentiate themselves, to do different things, to come up with different campaigns, different formats. And I think that, just like we had in like the 6th, 7th edition, where competitive events had a wide variety of different styles and play events, I think there's an opportunity for narrative to do stuff like that, and it has been happening. So I think this could be a good thing if they drop it and kind of turn it over more to the community.
Agreed. All right, moving on. The Psychic Phase returns, something that was dropped from 9th edition, or it was in 9th edition. It was dropped going into 10th. We had Psychic characters basically reworked, so they just had abilities that might have the Psychic tag. They had weapons that would have the Psychic tag. We have the occasional unit or army rule that gives feel no pain against Psychic attacks, things like that, but we don't really have a Psychic phase outside of the Thousand Suns and like one detachment of the Grey Knights. And when I say Psychic phase, I mean a dedicated phase where you cast Psychic powers, usually by doing a leadership check, where there's a chance of failure, where there's a chance you could take damage or lose a unit on failure, and possibly even having sets of Psychic powers to select. Although, depending on where you want to go with that, like it doesn't necessarily have to be that big, but do we see Psychic things becoming more their own thing, and then rather than just a keyword that's on a few things?
Nope. Very unlikely.
Yep, same. Nope.
Yeah.
I mean, as much as I would kind of like something, because right now, if something has a Psychic attack, you forget it is. Somebody might forget they have defense against Psychic. I mean, it's not really well done because, like you said, it's just a keyword. But I think they do like how the game is streamlined without having a Psychic phase. So I don't see that coming back.
Yeah, I think that's unlikely as well, just because I don't think, and plus you do have like those armies that don't engage with the Psychic phase at all, as opposed to like World Eaters that they kind of choose not to engage with the shooting phase, or Tau, who are just not good at the combat phase, but it's still a phase that they have to kind of participate in, whether they like it or not. But I think I would like to see more psychic powers have more relevance, but I think as far as them being in their own phase, I don't see that happening.
Yeah, kind of building off that, I think that you can do some things to make psychic powers better. You can give Grey Knights and Thousand Suns flexibility to choose spells. You can incorporate more psychic abilities in like the command phase or in the leadership phase or in, reactionary things in there without having to do a dedicated psychic phase. Because honestly, we've only had a psychic phase in 3 of 10 editions. It's not like it's always been an awkward fit. To Richard's point of a lot of armies cannot engage with this. And I really think the design philosophy for GW has been to not have sections of the game where your opponent just standing there doing nothing while I play a game. Like, I really do think that's one of their core design philosophies, is to try to make the game more engaging and more interactive throughout. I just don't see them going back to creating an entire phase that only exists for a handful of armies. I just don't see it.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. I think the return of a psychic phase, a dedicated psychic phase, probably falls under very unlikely. I would like to see psychic abilities punched up a little bit so they feel less like just a keyword. But like, I do like how a lot, not all, but a lot of the psychic abilities have like dual modes where it's like you can either do it at a lower power level, in which case it's totally safe, or you can push it, but it becomes hazardous. I do like that. I wish that was more consistent for some of the like the psychic-ish powers. I know there's a couple of units where they do have you have to make a leadership check, and if you fail, it doesn't happen. Or
it's the old psychic test.
Yeah, it's effectively a psychic test, but it happens like when you actively activate the ability. Just it happens to be an ability you do in like the movement phase or the command phase or what have you. Mm-hmm. Having that a little bit standardized to just like a set rule of, hey, this ability take a psychic test, and that there's a rule for a psychic test and what it does, so everybody's working the same way. But yeah, I don't see a dedicated psychic phase, and I would love to see psychic powers come back, but even that I could see as being maybe a little bit more customization and balance wiggle room than they necessarily want to deal with. So yeah, very unlikely psychic phase returns. Terrain rules. Moving on. Terrain rules get changed to be more robust. I know there's been a lot of feeling that 10th edition has very samey rules as far as terrain, and we end up with standardized terrain sets that are all just ruins, because that's pretty much anything uses. You barely ever see craters. You very rarely see forests used regularly. You don't see a lot of just obstacles and scattered terrain. It is like ruins and then shipping containers to fill in some of the spots and block line of sight. And that is primarily it. And even though 10th edition does have support for all those kinds of terrain that I just spelled out, you still really only see ruins and shipping containers. And even then, most people don't go over shipping containers. They just go around them. And partially because the fly rules are also quite bad.
As someone who's in the middle of printing 40 tables worth of standard terrain for an event, I hope it doesn't change, but I also do hope it changes. To be honest with you, I think this is where the game diverges a little bit. I think for competitive 40K, I think the GW is perfectly content with where the standard layout, the standard terrain consistency is important. And I think for that, I think they want to have a terrain set of rules for competitive play where you have standard layouts, standard types of things, to avoid ambiguity of this weird custom thing does this in one event and does this in one game and different. I think they want it to be clear, concise, and standard for competitive play. I want them to also have optional rules in there to put the freaky terrain in there for narrative games where you can fight on top of a ruined Thunderhawk and have rules and stuff for that and do more interesting stuff. But I think there's 2 use cases for it, and I think they're going to stick with the standard terrain for competitive games.
See, and I think this would be the one where if we could sit on a fence, I would. But I'll say likely GW's dabbled with it in the past. I mean, we gave feedback saying we would want to see more specific terrain. Please print out more terrain. And we got terrain pieces for each faction. Mm-hmm. Well, they ended up being fortifications and put into codexes. That's, I don't think, exactly what we were wanting, but it was nice. But then they didn't, I don't think, like having all those fortifications. So they've been removing them. And so I don't know what shape it would be, but I agree with you, Kevin. Narrative, I think, special rules for that, but I think those will be in the narrative books. So I don't think that'll flow into the main book. So in the main book, and here's my case, Rob, I don't think it'll change too much, but it might, is the fact that a lot of those terrain features just gave you like cover or -1 to hit. And you already get that so many other ways. The only thing that defines terrain in a competitive game is it line of sight blocking? Yes, no. So I think that's why we only see ruins and shipping containers.
I think the best iteration, and while I think there were some problems with 9th edition's terrain rules as far as like the toe in, like if you had a toe in, you could be shot through a piece of terrain, but if you were toe out, you can't. Like, there's parts of that I don't like. But the one thing I really liked with 9th edition's terrain rules was the keyword system, where you could basically just assign keywords to every piece of terrain, and that told you exactly what rules it had. So you could make any piece of terrain and just say, okay, yeah, this is obscuring, this is difficult, like this is obscuring and difficult, or they had a whole set of them. I'm trying to remember them off the top of my head and I don't have them, but it was easy to construct rules for any piece of terrain that was on a table, and rather than having to say like, this is woods and they're always like this, and this is a crater and this is a ruin and they are always like this. I do agree with you, Kevin, that having standardized for match play, I think, is good. Mm-hmm. It's just that not everything is match play, and especially as they push narrative play more, and especially like 500 Worlds had entire sections for like every battlescape you could play in, where it's like, oh hey, this is the kind of terrain you should set up for this, and a lot of it was not the standardized table setup.
Yeah, and that's where I get to. Is like, I think that you're going to see this diverge. I think you're going to see for standard match play, you're going to see more standard like what we have now, and then as we get narrative or alternative play styles, this is where you can really do some of the interesting stuff with terrain. And I agree with you. I liked the keyword system on the terrain. The problem then was, if you went to some event, okay, this ruin would have these 12 keywords, and I know it's an exaggeration, but this would have these 12 keywords, and you have to remember all of those, and you go to the next event and it only has 4 keywords. So there was still like, there was a lot, there could be wild swings between events that would be confusing, and then you'd forget that like, okay, this also gave you this. So even that system wasn't perfect.
Fair. Yeah, and I understand, Dennis, like why you want to kind of sit on this one. I think it's likely that the rules change somewhat to open up more options, but unlikely to be changed a lot. Because I think if we're talking matched play, and I guess it depends on also, are we seeing 40K, especially as the way Games Workshop approaches it, is it primarily a matched play game or a narrative game, or are they trying to please both equally? And I feel like they have to make the train rules a bit more robust to support narrative play to the level they want. But yeah, I feel like match play rules as they currently are, they're kind of fine there. So
yeah, that's ultimately what it comes down to me. Is like the terrain rules for match play and for competitive events, I find them boring, but they're clear, they're pretty concise, they're consistent. that there's a lot of value in that. You go to an event, you know what the terrain is going to look like, you know how it's going to work. You don't have to ask questions. You don't have the weird, complicated edge cases like toe in, toe out, things like that. It's like, it is pretty clear and concise, and I think there's definitely value in that. And I don't think they're going to completely chuck that to have a more defined system. I think if anything, it's more of like, okay, here's an optional add-on system that allows you to do more stuff. But honestly, I think where they're at right now, they're probably pretty happy with.
So we're thinking unlikely then in general?
Yeah, I think unlikely.
Yeah, in general, I would agree that I think it's unlikely that it's the core rules are going to include more terrain.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So unlikely terrain rules get changed a whole lot. Next one. This kind of ties into Crusade, if whether Crusade gets removed or not. Crucible of Champions added to Codex. This is probably a little wish listing on my part, because this is something I talked about in our review of the Maelstrom and the Crucible of Champions, and the fact that there are not nearly enough copies of the Maelstrom out there to get those rules in the hands of everyone who might want to have them. But considering how concise a system it was, how each faction only had like a couple of pages, Space Marines had like 4 because they're just the biggest faction, not include, and then a page each for all the various supplemental chapters. Could we see Crucible of Champions actually getting added as a narrative component to codexes or digital rule sets, however we want to voice that, basically making that part of the core experience for 40K?
Yeah, I was originally going to say unlikely, but based on our talks today and thinking the points are coming back, I'm moving over to likely. I think this will get rolled in with the point stuff.
Yeah, I not only do I think this is likely, I don't think this is even a narrative thing. I think this is just a standard part of 40K going forward. You'll have the ability to customize leaders and maybe certain units for match play, for regular events. And that's where you'll have a little bit of like the fiddly list building and customization, as well as not having to go all the way back to, points of, point cost for every unit. I think this is going to be hopefully a middle ground for every codex going forward.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is very likely.
I think I would even go so far as to maybe say this is very likely. I could definitely see likely is probably more realistic, but I'm hedging towards very likely because it also addresses one of the issues that regularly gets brought up. It addresses 2 of the issues that get brought up for 10th edition. One is, yes, that lack of character customability, that lack of unit customability. And while this is nowhere near the level of customability that we saw in old editions of the game, it is still, I think, a sufficient level to allow you to create something that feels like yours. And it encourages something we haven't seen in a long time, which is encouraging kit bashing, which also Games Workshop would be smart to do because it gets people buying more kits for parts. It's like from a business standpoint, you want people buying more and more kits. But then on top of that, it fills in. The other thing is that it fills in the gaps that a lot of times it feels like codexes have, where we don't have a prefixed character that attaches to this unit or that unit. We don't have a named character that attaches to this unit or that unit. And it leaves certain armies, certain detachments feeling very incomplete. We've talked about how Votann actually get a big boost from Crucible Champions because so many of their units don't have a character that can attach, and Crucible Champions added that for so many of them.
And none of it's broken, but it's at least options.
Right. Sisters of Battle, the Penitent detachment, had so few characters that could actually attach, and their Crucible Champions rules fix that. It makes that detachment, I think, a lot more playable because you have more options to create characters who can attach to those penitent units.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like armies like that. World Eaters got some, like, hey, look, you can have a Terminator Lord. who can attach to Terminator. It's like so many things that you could slot in that you just did not have an option for before that fill in one of those gaps of, hey, I would like to take this unit, but I can't bring a character and you don't make one that I can use. I could kit bash one, but I've got no rules for it. And it's not even in Legends. What do I do? Crucible of Champions, it fixes a lot of that. And honestly, I think kind of removes a little bit of the need to put certain characters into Legends also. And I think that's a win-win for everyone. So I would say likely edging towards very likely that something like this could get put in.
You just mentioned something there that I think is also a good point. Like, let's talk about the Space Marine Captain, okay? There is a Space Marine Captain in Gravis armor, in Phobos armor, in regular armor. There is a jump captain with relic shield, all of these things. This is an option to be like, here's your captain. Here's everything you can kit him with. 1 unit. Boom.
Yep.
1 unit option. Cut out like 8 unit options out of the Space Marine Codex. Because one of the things we'll talk about later is there's way too many options in some codexes. This is a way to consolidate.
What if I wanted to do my captain legion, where the entire army is just captains?
That's what your lieutenants are for.
Okay.
I even in my wildest dreams, I know that GW is not going to get rid of the 25 different injuries for lieutenants. I know that. I have accepted that. But they might be able to consolidate some of these other ones. Like, they have a lieutenant edition. I get it. That's fine. But no, like this, like in a non-joking way, this does actually like consolidate things and actually allows you to build like a Chaos Lord. And then here's your options for the Chaos Lord. And it also prevents you from doing things like, all right, I'm going to take 8 Space Marine captains because I have the points and I have a detachment that allows me to do that. Like, you're actually limiting and balancing the game a little bit more. So I think it's a really good option. I really, really hope they do it.
Yeah. I think it's good. It's good for the game. And that's how big an impression Crucible Champions made on me. And it just feels like that addresses so many issues with the game that people have had that it seems like a no-brainer to add it. And so, yeah, I would say likely to very likely. Starting to get to individual armies now that we've kind of moved from the general predictions to individual armies. Do we see a new Imperium Primarch released during 11th edition?
Almost assuredly.
I'm going to lean towards likely, but I really want Lehman Russ, and it's not going to be Lehman Russ, and I'm going to be sad.
I'm thinking if we get one, it might be Vulcan.
Yeah, I think this is likely, and yeah, I would lean probably towards Vulcan.
Yeah,
I mean, centerpiece models are a huge thing. GW likes putting out the impressive model of the year, centerpiece thing. People like buying them. People like painting them. The incentive structure is absolutely there. Whether you like Primarchs being in the game or not, the incentive structure is there for them to release as many as they can over the next several years. So, yes, I think so.
Yeah. And considering we've got 4 Chaos Primarchs and 2 Imperium Primarchs, and there's at least 2 Imperium Primarchs who could come back with really no big, having to twist or retcon the lore anyway. Like, there's a couple, honestly, Lehman Russ and Vulcan seem like gimmies as
just coming back, even in his giant wolfen form. Just imagine like a 12-inch tall, wolfen, hulked out guy, and just smashing.
12-inch tall? You're talking like that's knight-sized, sir.
Yeah.
No,
I mean, that's the thing I also don't like is all of the Imperium Primarchs are tiny compared to the Chaos ones. I really want to see one that can go toe to toe.
It definitely bringing back Wolf for us would fill a niche for the Imperium with their Primarchs that the other Primarchs don't have. I think part of the issue is both Gilliman and Johnson are leaders and they're army buffs. They kind of do the same thing. Yes, one's a little more melee focused, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But they're monsters. Bringing back a Russ as a monster Primarch gives that a different feel, which would be cool. And it would just be a cool model.
I do think it's also interesting because at the end of 500 Worlds, right? Johnson's brother, we have to talk, but Remote's not there, right?
Right.
He's got more brothers.
True.
That is true. We just assume he's trying to talk to Bobby G.
We assume it's Bobby, but he's got other brothers.
Yep.
That is true.
Yep. If they weren't cowards, they'd come up with a way to bring Sanguinius back. Like,
No.
evolve the Sanguinor into the spirit. No, that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen.
Look,
but.
Cloning Secrets of the Sith. There's many that, somehow he returned.
Somehow
Anyway.
Sanguinius returned. Hey,
Somehow
he was technically
Sanguinius
Emperor
returned.
Sanguinius for a very brief time.
Somehow Sanguinius returned.
In Imperium Secundus, he was very briefly Emperor. So.
Yeah.
All right. So very likely that we're getting an probably very likely that we're getting a new Imperium Primarch sometime during 11th edition. Here's another one. New Chaos Primarch released during 11th edition. We have the 4 god-specific ones now that we have Fulgrim. Do we think we move into the non-god-specific ones? Do we see a Lorgar, or maybe with the Iron Warrior stuff, a Perturabo model getting released?
I mean, I'm going to go with the same thing of like the incentive structure is there for GW to continue to release things. So I think yes. I think this is highly likely as well.
I'd lean towards unlikely because they tend to only release one or the other. So if we're going to get a Imperium, I don't know that we'll get a Chaos.
3 years in a cycle is a long time. So
well, for the whole cycle, I think we need 1 and 1 to keep them balanced. But Chaos has 4, Imperium has 2. So we're not balanced yet. So maybe we'll get 2 Imperium Primarchs then. Take that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would kind of lean. I think I wouldn't go with very likely. I'd probably say likely, just, again, based on like the financial incentive of, releasing the big showcase miniature. I think we'll probably get an Imperium one first, and then a little later down the line get, another Chaos one.
Yeah, because this is really let's see, our options would be Lorgar, Perturabo, and maybe Omegon. Do we get an Alpha Legion? Because we can't, because the other, like Horus and Conrad Kurz are dead, like very, very dead. So we've only got 3 options, and of the 3, I'd say like Perturabo is the most likely with all the Iron Warrior stuff lately, but technically that could, I'm gonna say unlikely, because if we get him, we might actually get him before 11th edition comes out.
Yeah, fair enough.
I could see him being revealed next week. Yeah.
No, fair enough. But I think the incentive's there to release more, and I think they're going to try to keep doing that. So,
yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. Speaking of incentives to sell things, adding a new faction during 11th edition. We had Emperor's Children broken out of Chaos Space Marines and made their own faction during 10th edition, which was really the only new faction that was added. Do we see anything that we haven't seen before with the 20-something factions we already have? Do we see something new coming on the horizon?
I'm going to be weird. Very likely.
Really?
Yep. James Workshop already told us it's Codex Zotes. It's coming.
Codex Zotes.
I'm going to say unlikely for like a full faction. I think you're going to see some weird stuff come out of Kill Team. Like, I think you might see more alien auxiliary units come out for Kill Team and like get data sheets within like a Renegade Chaos faction or within the Tau Empire. I don't think we're going to get, a Codex Skaven or anything, Codex Space Rats this edition. But I think you could start seeing some of those alien auxiliaries and other units getting back into the game and being sprinkled in here and there.
Like Chaos Dwarfs.
I think it's unlikely, like, for a whole entirely new faction. And that also comes down to a base of more rules balancing. And they've kind of got things where they like it now. And just adding in more factions just makes that even harder. So
agreed.
I don't see that Yeah, I can agree with Kevin on the, like, we'll see new things, and there may be, like, weird outlier things, but yeah, those will probably be attached to existing actual factions.
Yeah, I'm gonna say, as far as like a brand new like standalone faction, I'm gonna say very unlikely. But I do think, and I know there are people like, oh, but we want Dark Mechanicus or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Dark Mechanicus up until now has been part of the Chaos Space Marine faction. So I could definitely see like, hey, if we want to add some Dark Mechanicus stuff, I could even see them doing something where it's like, hey, here's a detachment where you can take demon engines and then you can take up to 500 or 1,000 points of Skitarii and like tech priests, and they lose Doctrina Imperatives, and instead they get Dark Packs.
Yeah, it's just Gene Stealer cults, Brood Brothers, but for Dark Mechanicus.
Exactly. Yeah. We have models for doing it, and it seems to work okay. So I think we get weirdness and new things added to existing factions. I don't think we get a full brand new standalone faction. Especially not since we've had no big narrative build up to it, really. I think that would be we had lots of hints of Fulgrim coming all through 9th edition, and we kept waiting for it to happen. And so when it did happen, it's like, finally. But I don't feel like we've had that yet to that extent. We've had little bits and pieces, like we mentioned earlier, like what the Silent King saw, but I don't think we have enough to make a faction out of it yet.
You don't need many models for a faction. Just look at Emperor's Children and Votann.
Yeah, no, you do. It's just that's the bad way to do it, is to not. However, if while we don't think any factions are likely to be added, what about demons, Chaos Demons, being removed as a standalone faction? They are one of 2 factions to not get a print codex, and a lot of their stuff has been moved into individual god-specific.
I'm going to move to likely. I could see this being a way for them to legend it. They'd still have their air quote rules and data sheets inside of all the Chaos Legion and the Chaos Space Marine books. So, but you wouldn't have the vast variety you do now. I don't know that I agree with that, but I think that is where they're trending.
Yeah, I think that's actually kind of a good, again, I'm taking a lot of split paths on here on things. I think that it's probably likely they get removed or get moved to Legends as their own standalone faction, so you could still play them in narrative or still play them in certain events. Probably get removed from competitive play outside of the specific utilization in the god-specific codexes.
Yeah, I see that too. I would call this... I don't know that I'd go as far as to say very likely, but likely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I definitely could. I'm definitely leaning towards likely. I definitely could see Bellicor getting moved into the Chaos Space Marine detachment, or Chaos Space Marine faction codex, whatever, especially because his standalone detachment for demons is basically a demon Space Marine hybrid faction anyway. So I could definitely see him just getting rolled into that book. Does that mean other demons will get added to other codexes? I think it'll be done similar to how Chaos Space Marines can bring in like cult troops from other codexes. I could see them saying, oh, and you can add the plague bearers and heralds into a detachment or something like that. But I just don't see demons sticking around. They've moved away from that in Age of Sigmar. They're definitely moved away from that in 10th edition. I think, if anything, they open up the detachments a bit for the god-specific ones. So, like, hey, you could have a World Eaters detachment that is all Khorne demons rather than having a half and half. But that would just be one detachment.
And we've seen, we've seen over time across game lines that GW is not interested in having multiple factions appear in multiple games. So it just feels like that's probably how they're going to try to go. They're going to continue to limit that option. And then, kind of contradicting what I said in the last question, if they remove demons as a faction, that does potentially open up a spot going forward that they could bring in something else or bring in a different faction and kind of keep the game balance the same. So,
yeah, So we are leaning towards likely on demons going away as a standalone faction.
Yep.
Okay, the other codex, the other faction that didn't get a print codex this edition, Deathwatch being removed as a standalone faction.
I have a twisted answer on this one of likely but unlikely.
All right, that's fence sitting. We've had this discussion.
I know. And I say that because I don't think they will get a standalone codex, but I do think they will get rolled up into Codex Space Marine.
Yes. I don't think Deathwatch is going away. I think their rules get consolidated. But yeah, they'll still be in the game. Whether that's as a standalone faction with their own codex, highly unlikely. But as part of Space Marines or something that you can splash into Imperial Agents or, you know, whatever future detachments they might have, I think they will still be playable in the game. I think they're too popular. The backlash we saw, like how quickly they backtracked on removing them from the game, I just don't think that they're to try that again. Hopefully they're not that dumb.
Yeah, I think it's likely that they get removed, and you see a detachment in the Space Marines Codex that is focused on them.
Yeah, you'd have to put in something. If you put them in Space Marines, you'd have to put something in like kill teams would have to have the Deathwatch keyword, so you couldn't mix them in with other factions, things like that.
It's the same as having Black Templars there.
Yeah.
I mean, if they remove Black Templars out, then I'd say Deathwatch and Black Templars would get supplements, but since they're there, I think they're all going to stay in there.
I think the only tricky thing would be if you, like, for Deathwatch to have a standalone supplement, they would have to have more than one detachment. I think that's tricky to do with them.
So I wonder, and this is like consolidating a few of these questions and maybe getting like a little red stringy here, but if you do like the Crucible of Champions style creation of leaders, okay, and you have like a Space Marine captain or a Deathwatch captain, and then you can like customize and do all the different things, and you have some of these options there to do that for across the board, I could see a path where GW splits the Space Marine codexes into kind of like they did with the God-specific ones, into Salamanders, Ultramarines, Deathwatch, Black Templars, Blood Angels, etc. Have them as standalone codexes, and then have Blood Angels captain, here's all of your Crucible of customization options here. Here's your Deathwatch captain, I could see that. I don't know that they'll do it, but I could see a path for that.
I would like that, specifically because the main reason they rolled everything together because when codexes came out so few and far between, like a Space Marine Codex came out, Land Raiders got upgraded. Well, Space Wolves had their own codex. They didn't get to use the upgraded one. They had to stick to the old one. But now if we can have digital updates of, like if you update the Land Raider, well, all the Space Marine codexes get the updated version. It's no longer a problem. So I want to see the Space Marines pulled out of the Space Marine Codex like they do with the God-specific chapters.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be nice. But yeah, I'm leaning towards unlikely for, like, at most I see Deathwatch getting rolled more fully into Imperial Agents.
No.
Mm-hmm.
But then trying to find some way to make them work with the Space Marine rules. And I think it's very tricky to do that. So like that would be the only thing I could see them doing that would be removing them as a standalone faction. I think, especially if we have digital rules distribution, Deathwatch remains as a standalone faction. Maybe it is only limited to one. Maybe they come up with a second detachment that does. Maybe you have a detachment that does more teleportation shenanigans than the mission tactics, something like that.
Grey Knights already has that covered, though.
They have that covered, but there are other factions that do it too. It would be interesting to see do one with the kill teams, because the way Grey Knights play is very different just on a unit by unit basis than the way Deathwatch would. So I'm just saying, if you had to add a second attachment, I can think of ways to add second attachments. They already have like a stratagem in the Black Spear that lets you do teleportation shenanigans. I could see something that moves in a slightly different direction, but I think the only reason Deathwatch didn't get a print codex is because Games Workshop horribly misjudged how the community felt about it. Yes. And by the time, and then like at the time, it's like, well, we don't have time because of the length of time it takes to get a codex together and in print and printed. They knew that they wouldn't get it done in time before the edition was pretty much over. And so, yeah, it was a huge backpedal, and I'm glad they did it. They needed to do it.
Yes.
But I think Deathwatch is one of those factions that, like, demons, they're okay popularity wise, but as they're moving on, I think people are kind of seeing the writing on the wall of where demons are going. But Deathwatch, I don't see they take Deathwatch away. It's just too popular a faction.
Yeah.
Okay, next one. Firstborn Marines. There's not very many of them left. There's Tactical Marines, Devastator Marines, Vanguard Vets, and I think technically Centurions would still be considered Firstborn Marines. Firstborn Marines getting removed and or legended.
I will jump in and say, I think it's likely, and I will also say that I think it's time. I don't know if they will... It's interesting. Like, I think some of the units will be like legended and moved to legends and stuff like that. But I think other units like Centurions or stuff like that, they're just not gonna make a distinction between Firstborn and Primaris anymore. They'll just be like, yeah, this is just a Space Marine unit. So I think it's what we've been seeing is we've been seeing these models kind of slowly removed in there. And I wouldn't be surprised if at some point we just see a tactical Marine unit that lets you say, okay, yeah, they have bolters in this profile, and then maybe you can add in 2 special weapons, and it makes no distinction between it being a Firstborn or a Primaris unit. So I don't know. I do think that the focus on the difference is going to go away, whether that comes down as these units being moved out and put in legends specifically, or they're just kind of all blended together and where it just doesn't matter anymore.
I mean, that goes along with the discussion of what was adding in Primaris as a lore component of the game a mistake.
Like, I don't think it was, honestly.
Other armies have had their models like scaled up over time in a similar fashion, but there was not the lore distinction between the bigger orc boys versus, you know, the old 5th edition orc boys that came in the Black Reach box.
I think the difference, though, and why they felt they had to do it is, and as much as I love orcs, there is an exponential difference in players that play orcs versus Space Marines.
Fair.
Like, I think that's why they felt they had to do it. Now, in my opinion, I don't think they needed to go quite as, like, hardline as they did. I think they could have been like, yeah, Primaris Marines are bigger, and maybe they have a slightly different profile or whatever, but like they don't, you know, we've changed everything. Now they have weapons. You can have a mixed unit of like a Primaris Sergeant and several Firstborn guys. Like, I don't know why they ever needed to have that distinction, you know, of like, well, yeah, why are Primaris Marines only allowed to only take the same one bolter in a unit? And I think that leads into some of the streamlining of the gameplay itself that may have been seeded or may have just been a happy accident. But I think the differentiation is going to go away. I think that's what I think, rather than them making a concerted effort to be like, we've retired all the Firstborn. I think they're all Space Marines now, whatever. You know, we're 10 years into this. Almost 10 years into Primaris. I think at some point they just go, they're all Space Marines. They're all Space Marines. Just Space Marines go, you know.
So I will throw in there, what about the Rhino and Razorback? The 2 vehicles that until now Primaris have specifically been told you cannot fit inside.
I think we're going to get a new version of the Rhino at some point. Probably this edition. Some point in the next 3 years, we will get an upscaled, larger Rhino that everybody can use. Because that is, at this point, that Rhino kit is probably the oldest kit in the game.
It's up there, yeah.
You know, and like, I think the kit's great. I think it never made sense to me that Primaris Marines couldn't ride around in a Rhino, because clearly Space Marines can't ride around in a Rhino. I think you'll see a new version of the Rhino that will be slightly upscaled, and Space Marines can ride in it, and there won't be no distinction. Space Marine infantry can ride in this, and I guess I fully expect in the next edition or two, you're just going to stop seeing Primaris as a keyword, and you're just going to see Space Marine infantry, and there just won't be a distinction.
I don't think you're wrong. I think we see like the Tacticus keyword go away. Yeah, so my feeling on it is, I think it is likely that Firstborn Marines get removed as a separate thing whether that means we get a Primaris scale, like an upscaled like tactical squad, or finally, or like an upscaled Devastator squad, which I think is long overdue. Because let's face
what
it,
about the Nerf rockets?
Yeah, no, I was going to say the Desolation Marines ain't it. Like that's no, they are bad. I would like them to be legended, if anything.
So cool looking.
No, they aren't. So not. But
I tried to say that with a straight face.
But yeah, I like whether maybe they don't get legended, but I think it is likely, if not very likely, that by the time 11th edition is over, yeah, there's just Space Marines. Like at that point, even storyline wise, you can say like, yeah, all the old Firstborn have either crossed the Rubicon Primaris and been updated with surgery, like all the characters have been at this point, or they've died off from combat, just from attrition. So blah, it's just Marines is Marines. And again, there's so few units left that it matters on. I think it's very likely that they go away in some fashion.
Mm-hmm.
All right, now getting to the ones that were added later.
Yay!
First off, Eldar will be broken at the start of the edition and then nerfed to unplayable.
As is tradition. As is tradition.
Every edition, Eldar come out of the gates broken, and then like within a month they get patched into like nerfedness.
It depends on how big a change 11th is, since we've already said 11th is not likely to be a major rewrite unless they do a massive rewrite on the Eldari rules. They're already kind of where they are, so I don't think that necessarily changes much.
I will change my thing. I don't think it'll be Eldar, because I think GW is going to want to switch it up a little bit and make it a different faction that's overpowered out of the gate. So I'm going to go Leagues of Votann. Super overpowered out of the gate and then get nerfed back down.
No, they've already done that one, dude.
Yeah, they have already done that. They've already done Necrons. You know what? I got it. Imperial Agents. Imperial Agents out of the gate are going to be super overpowered, and then they'll get nerfed into
You heard it here first,
Call
folks.
it now. But in all seriousness, yeah, when you make changes like this, there will be an adjustment period, and there will be a faction that comes out the gate wrecking shop and then gets nerfed into oblivion, as is the time-honored GW tradition.
Right. Will it be Eldar? Too soon to say. All right, next one. Chaos will get something good, and Kevin will still complain. This is very likely.
Very likely.
I don't complain about chaos stuff. What are you talking about? This is the year of chaos. I am super happy.
No, last year was the year of chaos.
I know, yes.
And yet, we're getting all the good chaos stuff now still.
Right, yeah. Well, like, to be honest with you, I don't like the fact that the Defiler's on a round base, or on an oval base. Yes, yeah. Chaos players complain about everything, as do gamers. So it's not explicitly a chaos thing. It's just more amplified on chaos because we're unpleasant assholes.
Let's see. Next up, Orks will still be krumpin, very likely.
Yes.
I mean, what else would they do?
Maybe they're going to get cunning and crump in a cunning way, but cunning but brutal way.
Well, or a brutal but cunning way. Either way, krumpin be krumpin.
Yep, be crumpin.
APK, always be krumpin.
Be crumpin.
Votann will get a Titanic unit. Oh, there's some Dennis wish listing right there.
That is very much me wish listing.
Yeah, they'll actually get a model for the actual Votann itself, and you'll just have this big giant ancestor computer you can put on the table.
That would be fortification, cool, and no one will take it.
Yes, I'm going to say very hopefully likely.
I don't think they get a Titanic unit, but I definitely think they get a second wave and get like a battle tank and more units and stuff.
Yeah, I think it's, in all honesty, I think it's unlikely they get a Titanic unit. I do think they get some, I think they get a couple more options. I think GW's kind of moving away from everybody gets a Titanic unit. Mm-hmm. You have Knights and Chaos Knights, and I think outside of that, it's what, like... Are the Gorkanaut and Morkanaut considered Titanic at this point?
I think they do still have Titanic.
I think those two still have it.
Yes.
And you've got the Storm Surge for the Tau, but that's about it. Well, the Wraith Knight. Sorry, forgot the Wraith Knight. Nobody takes it, but
I took it to a narrative event. It died horribly.
So I did.
I think like specifically about Voton, I think you're correct. I think that they are trying to kind of like keep the Titanic units a little bit more separate. But the one thing I will say, unless they change the rules or they change how list building is done, Voton would have no access to a Titanic unit because they can't ally in Knights, they can't ally in, you know, the Chaos stuff. Yeah, so like, but like, well, let's say it's like Eldar Tau have Titanic units because they don't have access to other things, so they have a few in their own thing. So I could maybe see one being there. I have no conception of what it would be. Like, I don't know what would fit with Voton to be like a big Titanic unit outside of just like, here's a bigger tank. And like, that's not, I don't know. I say no only because I don't really know what it could be.
Yeah, and the old thing was the train that shot missiles, and I don't think a train that shoots missiles would be match the tables.
Yeah.
Big, giant transport gyrocopter.
Hey, we could get the next Manta.
Giant Titanic flyer. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Stack multiple templates that don't work.
Yeah, I think, like, outside of Knights, I really don't think that we're getting any new Titanics for any faction. I think those are artifacts of like that 6th and 7th edition era where they were like, well, we're doing Apocalypse, everybody needs a big thing.
That's true. And there was a big push for Apocalypse at that time too.
Right. And even the Gorkanaut and Morkanaut were kind of artifacts of that time where it's like, well, there's the Stampa, but then we need something a little bit smaller. But they weren't Titanic at the time. They became Titanic with 10th, but originally they weren't. And I think we're just kind of we're moving away from that somewhat. So I think it's unlikely that anybody outside of Knights or possibly an Imperium Primarch, if we get a 12-inch tall wolfed out Leman Russ.
I think you can wear a Leman Russ tank on each foot as a roller skate.
No, we're not doing that.
But well, yeah,
I think very unlikely that Voton get a Titanic unit.
Yeah. Well, and I think as well, like you're to kind of play, add on to that, the rules of the game itself have changed because when, back in 6th, 7th edition, when Apocalypse and all that stuff was a big thing, not every unit could wound a big Titanic vehicle. Mm-hmm. So you needed to have your own big Titanic things. Now in the current edition, the way things are set up, everything can still like kind of take care of it. I was able to confirm the monolith is a Titanic model for the Necrons, so they do have one too. But so like, yeah, like I think the need to have Titanic models for every faction isn't there outside of the perspective of big centerpiece model, big shiny centerpiece model, give us $200. So I don't know. Like I said, I still lean towards no, but it's mostly because I just don't know what the Voton could get that would fit as a Titanic vehicle, Titanic unit for them. Not necessarily out of like GW doesn't want to continue to make big models because they clearly do. I just don't know what it would be. So maybe it's just lack of imagination on my part. And the listeners, get in the comments and tell us what gigantic Titanic vehicle you want for Voton or Titanic unit.
All of them.
And then our final prediction: many, many, many more models will go into Legends.
Yeah, and this was kind of one that I added just as we were going through the conversation. We were talking about like separating things out. It kind of occurred to me, it's like what I'm kind of asking here is, does GW kind of split the game into different formats and be like, competitive game, these models are not allowed. Narrative game, play with all your toys. Do they go through and do they take a hatchet to the Space Marine Codex? And we talked a little bit about with Firstborn, but do they take a hatchet to the Space Marine Codex and say, you don't need 180 units, here's 60 you can use competitively? And then they just move a bunch of stuff to Legends and only make it available in non-match play or non-competitive play. Kind of like how Magic has like different cycles, different formats, different, what is it called?
Formats,
yeah, like different, different form. Yeah, there was something else I was trying to think of there. I was like different formats of like what cards are active and what cards can be used in this format. So like, does GW move to something like that for say competitive play, where they wipe out a bunch of these units and just move them over to narrative and still support them kind of off to the side, but say, hey, we're not going to balance them for competitive play? And maybe, tying into the Titan conversation, maybe that moves your Titanic vehicles and Titanic units out of competitive play to streamline and simplify that. I don't know. Like, what do we think about that possibility?
I think there's actually, I don't know if we would go so far as to say they take a hatchet to Space Marines and reduce the number of units purely for like competitive balance necessarily. I think if you look at some of the other things that we've put together, though, like, hey, Firstborn Marines getting consolidated, legended, whatever, that I definitely think could happen. Titanic units getting, like, I could absolutely see, and I know, like there will be Orc players who will get mad about this because, again, there's this perception that if something is in Legends, you can't play with it, and I think we need to get rid of that. Absolutely. And also, I think GW could do a better job of acknowledging that by putting legend units in the app, because they're there. Like for the Age of Sigmar app, you can access, at least as far as I know, it's been a while since
they put them in the app, make a toggle so that way.
You make a toggle. You make it very clear that they're legends.
And they do this currently with the combat patrol stuff. So like the combat patrol units are in the codex and in the app and clearly marked that this is only for combat patrol.
If I go to the Age of Sigmar app, I can go to Stormcast Eternals, Sacrosanct Convocation, because that's the Sacrosanct Chamber. I have access to everything. It's just the legended units have a keyword legend. They have a very clear Legends label on them. Mm-hmm. So Age of Sigmar is handling it just fine. So there's no reason why the 40K app couldn't. So I think Games Workshop could do better acknowledging that Legends units are still viable for certain modes of play. Yeah, and to your point, Dennis, even if it's just a toggle where it's like, I want to see legend units, I don't want to see legend units. Mm-hmm. I mean, hell, New Recruit has that for army building. Like, if you want to say, like, I do or don't want to see legends units. Okay, fine, cool. But just because a unit is in legends doesn't mean it's unusable. It just means it's not usable in competitive match play. I definitely think we see a lot of units that are old, that are no longer produced. I think as units get retired, like I could see, we've already had a lot of the older Space Marine tanks, like the Hunter and the Stalker and stuff like that, moved over to Legends. Like the old Scout bikes and stuff moved over to Legends because they're no longer made, but people still have them. They didn't want to take your rules away. They're just not actively balancing them. I could see things like Flyers getting moved to Legends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I could see Titanic units generally getting moved to Legends outside of Imperial Knights because they're a pain to balance otherwise. I think with Crucible of Champions, there's a lot of things that don't have to be moved to Legends. I think there's actually things that could be, I guess you could still have Legends versions of particular named characters if you want bespoke rules for them. But I think you actually see characters consolidated down. If Crucible of Champions gets made part of, like, this is standard 40K, you just build, like you said earlier, Kevin, like you build a Space Marine, like here's your captain template, figure out what war gear you want on it. Boom, you have a captain. We have a ton of different models for captains. Make the one you want and build it with one data set. And that way all captains run the same too, which is something that we don't have right now. But I definitely think we'll see more things going to Legends. I think Flyers could end up in Legends. Fortifications could end up in Legends. Things where, like, this is not suited for matched play. But hey, it's cool for narrative play. Absolutely do it. Because I don't think I've seen really anybody outside of, like, Deathwatch players bringing a Corvus Blackstar, because, man, they don't have many options. Like and even then, a lot of Deathwatch players don't use the Corvus Blackstar because they have access to the Space Marine Codex. But like, I could see that ending up in, like, all the Flyers ending up in Legends, just because Flyers are hard to balance. They interact weirdly with everything else. Yeah. So for match play, I definitely could see more things going to Legends. I think that's likely. Would it be many, many, many more? I think there's only a few factions where you could even cut that many things, but I could definitely see a number of things ending up in Legends for sure. So I would say likely. Yeah,
I think so too. I think there could be some major cleanup on some of these factions. The other thing that I didn't put on the list, but I was in talking about some of this format stuff. What do we think is going to happen with Combat Patrol? Like, do you think Combat Patrol continues as its own separate thing? Do they try to take from Age of Sigmar and make what's it called in Sigmar? Spearhead. Make Spearhead kind of a format in 40K for smaller games. I don't know. Like, what do we think of that? Because I think everyone would agree that the current combat patrol system doesn't work.
I think they'll revisit it somehow. Because combat patrol, there's a lot of people that like it as it is.
Mm-hmm.
I don't. It's a good introduction for lore, but I'm not sure it's a good introduction for how the game's played. But I think Spearhead has also diverged from Sigmar, so I don't really see it changing.
Interesting. Yeah, I think they'll change it. I just don't know how. Because I think they've kind of acknowledged that what they're doing isn't working the way they want it to, and they'll try to do something. Because I still think they want to have some sort of introductory level, go buy a box, put these models together, and play a game version of the game, and I think that's good. I just think that they need to have more. It needs to be reworked a little bit.
So I'm looking at questions about some an actual thread on Reddit. I shouldn't understand actually. So I'm looking at a thread on Reddit from r/Warhammer saying questions about Age of Sigmar Spearhead. Hey, 40K player here. I keep hearing folks say that Spearhead is better than Combat Patrol, and some people like it better than full scale Age of Sigmar. So Spearhead is still a thing that's going. They are still putting out new Spearheads, because this post is from a week ago. So I think Spearhead is still popular. It is not the primary method for people playing Age of Sigmar by far, but it is a thing that people are still actively playing, and they have released at least one like new quote unquote season of Spearhead with like a different board instead of objectives and such. I think Combat Patrol could be reworked, but it would have to be, it would require them to do a lot more work with it. I definitely think Combat Patrol as it is has been kind of a failure.
Yeah.
Whereas Spearhead has been more of a success, but Age of Sigmar is also primarily a melee game. And so having a board where you're playing on a kill team sized board for Spearhead, and having like 4 units run at each other and fight in the middle is easier to handle than a shooting game at that scale with full units. So
sure.
I think so let me see, how do I want to phrase this? It is unlikely that Combat Patrol continues as it is. I don't think 11th edition has the equivalent of 10th edition Combat Patrol. I think it is likely that 11th edition gets a completely reworked Combat Patrol, especially now that we have Combat Patrols that are, because the problem with 10th edition Combat Patrol is they were using the leftover Combat Patrols from 9th edition, which were not developed for balance.
That is true.
Yeah.
And it's also one of the reasons why new Combat Patrol comes out, new Combat Patrols come out, and we tend to be, not always, but we tend to be like, well, this is kind of disappointing compared to what Combat Patrols used to be, especially for the price point. I still think Combat Patrols that's the other thing. Combat Patrols in 40K are still like $30 more expensive than Age of Sigmar.
Mm-hmm.
Than the equivalent, because in fact we just had some new ones go up for pre-order for Spearheads, because Ossiarch Bone Reapers are coming out. So let's see, new and exclusive, all pre-orders. Spearheads for Ossiarch Bone Reapers is $150, and I think that is consistent with other pricing for Spearhead. Yeah, the Spearheads are all priced at $150, and that's even been a slight bump from in the past where it was like $140, but everything got price bumped. But that's $150 for a army that is in a is designed to be fully playable for a specific format, versus if we go to 40K and we go Combat Patrol, the Combat Patrols are $20 more expensive for a format that does not have nearly that level of support for how it is played. And I don't think there's been new Combat Patrol missions since the edition launched.
Just in the core book.
Yeah. So if they do revise Combat Patrol, which I absolutely think they should, like it's a good intro to the game. It just needs to be better supported, and it needs a better format. And it seems like they could take what they've learned from Age of Sigmar Spearhead and do it. So will Combat Patrol continue in 11th edition? Likely, but not in the format that it currently is. if that makes go.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it'll continue, but it'll be something very different. And I think that is all our predictions for the next edition. And if there's anything that we haven't touched upon that you think, like something I didn't even think to put in here is, will the fly rules change? I don't know, but I hope so. But yeah, so if there's anything we haven't covered, or if you disagree with our stances on what is likely and unlikely, we'd love to hear from you. You can always comment on our YouTube videos, join our Patreon and talk to us. Or you can even comment on the podcast. We get comments, I think, via Spotify generally. So anywhere you want to contact us. And I think you can still email us from our website as well. But we'd love to hear from you and find out what you think of our predictions and what you think might happen with 11th edition. So we'll be back in a couple of weeks. But until then, from all of us here at Preferred Enemies, I'm your host, Rob.
Kevin.
Dennis.
And Richard.
Good night, good gaming, and here's to the future of 40K.